All right, we're going to continue our discussion about the age of exploration. And today we're going to focus on a period of about 100 years between 1407 and 1507. In our last discussion, we talked about two essential questions. Number one, why were people during the Middle Ages driven to explore new lands? And number two, what inventions and technology made exploration more feasible or more possible? We're going to keep talking about those two questions. They're really key questions. So remember, we looked at this map last time. This is the map of the known world in 1407. And there's Europe, which they had a fair understanding of. Africa is not at all accurate. And today, a lot of our story is going to be consumed with filling in Africa. If you look at the bottom of the map, one thing to notice is they didn't even know if they could get around Africa. They didn't know if there was an ocean at the bottom there, or if the land just extended forever, or if it was a flat land and the land extended until it dropped off into nothingness. They didn't know what was at the bottom of the map. Asia, as we discussed last time, was fairly well known because of the years, the centuries really, when people had been traveling the Silk Road to trade. Remember those all-important spices, the salt that helped preserve the meat, and things like pepper, which helped flavor the meat. If it's a little bad, a little pepper goes a long way. And India, which again, not very accurate. India is not a bunch of islands. And today we're going to fill in some key pieces of India as well. This is where we're going. By the end of our time today, Africa will look like this. It will be considerably more filled in. And if you see at the very tip, the very southern end of Africa, by 1507, they get the answer to that question. There is an ocean at the bottom of Africa, and you can get through to India on the other side. So there's Europe, there's Africa with that lovely passage at the south, there's Asia, and India. You can see there was a lot more known about India. So today our story is going to focus on how we filled in the map, especially Africa and India. And don't forget, America is coming. So our story begins in the small country of Portugal. You see, it's the purple country there. It was a small country in the 1400s, just like it is today. Spain was certainly much larger. You can see the green part of this map is the tip of Africa. And what is important to know is that for hundreds of years, Muslims from Africa had spread northward through what we call the Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal is the Iberian Peninsula. And the Muslims had conquered most of that peninsula. For approximately 700 years, most of the Middle Ages, the Spanish and the Portuguese were trying to push the Muslims back to Africa. And they were finally successful in about 1492. So when our story begins, Portugal is largely free of the Muslims, but Spain is not. Spain is still engaged in this struggle. And so Portugal now has some free time. And they're like, what should we do with this free time? Now that we're not fighting the Muslims anymore, let's get rich. Let's explore and see if we can get to India and get some spices and get into the trade routes. So you can see this greater map of more of the world. There's Portugal, just north of Africa. And this is like a preview of what's to come. In the next 100 years, between 1407 and 1507, Portugal is going to become a huge sea power, and they are going to explore much of the coast of Africa, and they are going to get to India because of this man, Prince Henry, also known as the Navigator. Now, Prince Henry was not actually a sailor. What he was the son of the king, And of course, if you're the son of the king, you have a lot of money. Prince Henry was interested in making money. He also was a Christian. Remember, there had been this conflict between Christians and Muslims for hundreds of years. And Prince Henry had a strong desire to spread Christianity. So he wanted to get wealthy. He wanted to be trading and get wealthy. He wanted to spread Christianity. And also, there were some pirate attacks coming from the northern parts of Africa. They were attacking Portugal, and he wanted to keep his country safe. So what he did was he said, I've got some money. I'm going to hire some shipbuilders, and I'm going to have them create a better ship. So ships of this time, remember we learned about the Viking Nar. That's a ship that's far north. Ships of the south, where we are in Portugal, they were heavily influenced by ancient Roman ships. And those ships could not leave the coast. They could not sail out into the ocean the way the Vikings did in the Nar. They couldn't, because those boats were not stable and safe if they got too far from the coast. Ships at the time only had one mast or one sail. And it was generally a square sail at this time, and it was fixed, meaning you couldn't change it. You couldn't put it up, you couldn't put it down. It just was fixed. All of those things contributed to making these boats very unsafe. So Prince Henry said, let's get the best minds together and see if they can make me a better ship. And they did. It's called the Caravel. The Caravel was faster than previous boats. It had 2 or 3 masts, or even 4 sometimes, which meant lots of sails. They were not fixed. They could take them up, they could put them down. They also had some triangular sails and some square sails, which meant that they could get the benefit of using whatever sail was the correct one for the weather. So they were much more maneuverable. They could tack right, they could tack left, they could tack against the wind. So they did not need the wind coming behind them like a square-sailed boat would. They could go with the wind, or they could sail into the wind, which meant they could go both directions. So these were much, much better ships than they had had previously. Prince Henry provided the money, and the shipbuilders provided the knowledge and the know-how and the innovation, and they invented the Caravel. Prince Henry also said, I'd like to fill in the map. So he hired cartographers. Cartographers are people who make maps. And he said, we're going to sail our caravels to Africa, and you're going to fill it in. We're going to find out what's down there. This is a caravel. This is a photograph of a caravel that was built in modern times, but it looks very similar to the ships that Prince Henry and his sailors were using in the 1400s. And this was the best ship for exploring for a couple of hundreds of years. It was considered really innovative technology. So again, back to our question, here is one of the ways that new technologies made exploration more feasible. With this ship, they could sail out into the ocean. They did not have to stay near the coast. They could handle rough seas, and they were fast. So Prince Henry and his shipbuilders and his cartographers had this great ship. And what they said is, well, let's see how far south we can go. In 1434, they sent a sailor, a captain named Gil Eanes, and he got past the Cape of Bojador. If you look on the map there, you'll see in Africa, which is yellow, the number 1434. That's how far Gil Eanes got. Not too far from Portugal. And when he landed, he found this massive desert called the Sahara Desert, and he was like, this is pretty crummy. And he turned around and went home. But he wasn't deterred. He said, I'm going to try again. And he loaded up more supplies and more sailors. By the way, that is the main drawback of the Caravel. It does not hold very many supplies. So always getting new supplies and new water was always a problem for a captain of a caravel. So this time Gil set out with more supplies, and he made it down beyond the Sahara Desert. If you know anything about the Sahara Desert, you know it's massive. But he made it below the Sahara Desert to a place called Senegambia. And you can see on the map the Senegal River. That's about where he got in 1444. Then Prince Henry sent another sailor, some more sailors, and they got all the way down to the Gold Coast. So by 1471, they were close to where it says Congo on the map. And then in 1488, Bartolomo Diaz went all the way. He got down to the very tip of Africa. It's called the Cape of Good Hope. Now, why did they name it that? Because the seas are incredibly stormy all the time. So when you get there, you just have to have good hope that you make it through the other side alive. In 1488, Bartolomo Diaz rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and he was the first European to say, hey, here's the Indian Ocean, here's the Atlantic Ocean. Now we know they are connected. But then he turned around. As you can see, his journey is marked in blue on the map. So he got all the way down and he turned around and went back home because he didn't know how much farther it was to India. So then in 1497, finally, a sailor made it from Portugal all the way down around the Cape of Good Hope and all the way to India. So his name was Vasco da Gama. Da Gama is important because he was the sailor who opened up a sea route so that people did not have to travel the Silk Road anymore. There was now a new way to get the goods from the east to the west. So in 1497, Vasco da Gama left Portugal. He made it to the Cape of Good Hope. It was a terrible, terrible crossing, but he made it through the other side. And then he started hopping up the east coast of Africa until he got, you can see his journey is also marked in kind of a darker blue on the map. He got to about Zanzibar, and then there was a sailor with him who had been to India before, and the sailor said, I think we can leave the coast and head straight over and we'll get there. And they finally did. It took him about a year to get to India. So Vasco da Gama got to India. On the return journey, he got a cargo which included lots of pepper, which was a very valuable spice. He had with him several ships. On the return journey, unfortunately, he lost about half of his ships and sailors. However, the few ships that made it home to Portugal had so much pepper and spices in their holds that he got vastly wealthy from this journey. From one journey, he became an incredibly wealthy man. And of course, so did the people who had sponsored his journey. So they knew it was worth it. Even if it cost hundreds of sailors' lives, it still seemed worth it. Why did Vasco da Gama get there when so many other sailors and so many other captains had turned around and they had not made it? Well, first of all, he had a wealthy patron. The King of Portugal, which was not, by now Prince Henry was dead. But this was the King of Portugal who really, really gave him a lot of money, a lot of support, a lot of ships because he really wanted this to work because he wanted to be wealthy. He thought, if we could get down around Africa, we could conquer the Muslim world. I could declare myself king of Jerusalem, and I could have all kinds of access to spices. So he really, really wanted it to work. So he gave a lot of money and support to Vasco da Gama. Another reason da Gama succeeded was because of a technology. The magnetic compass. So we take that for granted. We can hold a compass in our hand. It's got a little magnet. You probably even do it on a cell phone, right? You just hold it and it tells you which way is north. We take that for granted. This was a new and innovative technology. It had been invented by the Chinese long before Vasco da Gama used it, but it had not traveled to Europe, and Europe did not have it. So when the magnetic compass finally got to Europe, Vasco da Gama was able to use it. And that's why he was able to set out and go straight across the Indian Ocean instead of hugging the coastline. And he saved himself several months' journey there. He could navigate away from the coastline straight across to India. So this is a picture of a compass that is not quite as old as Vasco da Gama, but it would have looked like this. Again, it's the inventions of new technology that are making it possible. Our other question, of course, is important. Why were these people driven to explore? And in Vasco da Gama and in the King of Portugal, you'll see two of the three main reasons. When we talk about reasons for exploration during this age, we talk about God, gold, and glory. It's the three G's. I'm videotaping, hun. No worries. When we talk about explorers during this time period, we talk about their motivations. We talk about the three G's. They explored for God, they explored for glory, and they explored for gold. Certainly, Vasco da Gama was after gold, and so was the King of Portugal. Also, they wanted to spread Christianity. They wanted to spread their religion, so they were motivated by God and gold. We find out later, as we learn more about Vasco da Gama, that he was also really motivated by glory. He wanted to be famous. So the three G's definitely apply here. God, gold, and glory motivated the Portuguese to explore between 1407 and 1507. As they explored the coast of Africa, when they got to Senegambia, which is that part of Africa that kind of sticks out that looks like the elephant's ear, in about 40-ish, right in there, they realized they needed to make some money on these trips. There was a part of Africa where there was gold, and they certainly mined for gold, bought the gold from the Africans, stole the gold from the Africans, but there were no spices in Africa. This was not a spice land. They realized that there was another source of wealth, and that was in slaves. So beginning in the 1430s and 1440s, the Portuguese started trading with Africans and trading for slaves. So the Africans and the Portuguese would capture other Africans. They would put them in a boat. They would take them back to Portugal and sell them into slavery. And of course, that slavery is going to be a blight on the age of exploration. It's a theme that's going to come up over and over again about Europeans exploiting the people of the lands they explore. The Portuguese justified it because of God. They said that these Africans were Muslims and so should not be treated with the respect that Christians got. They believed that they were spreading Christianity and doing a good thing by helping these Africans become Christians. The slave trade was not huge at this point in time. From 1448 to 1490, about 1,000 Africans were captured and sold into slavery in Portugal. It was probably about 2,000 every year from 1490 until 1761, when Portugal abolished slavery. However, in that same time period, captains are going to realize there is a very rich source for the slave trade, and that is the plantations of the New World. So we will be revisiting the African slave trade several times throughout this journey we're taking together. So we've learned about the Viking Nar, technology that allowed Leif Erikson and Eric the Red to explore and discover the New World, but word didn't spread, people forgot. We learned about the Silk Road, which was one of the main motivations. You could make good money if you could trade on the Silk Road. And spices were key, helped preserve your meat and feed you all winter long. And, when it was January and the meat was just a little bad, a little pepper goes a long way towards disguising that taste. We learned about the Caravel. That was the next innovative ship and the next technology that made exploration more feasible. And we learned about the Portuguese as they filled in the map of Africa and the map of India in their quest to spread Christianity, to get involved in the spice trade. God and gold were their motivations. When next we talk, we're going to meet a man I think you may know. Thanks for watching.